Dear hearts, hey, happy new year, happy 2019, and we're so excited to be filming in the studio again, and we want to start off by thanking you for all your comments and your subscriptions. We so appreciate that, and your shares. Oh my gosh, we had tons and tons of shares last year, and we so appreciate that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we've got all kinds of great things planned for this year. And today we're going to be working on a project. I know a lot of you are project oriented, and so there's a lot of different techniques and steps involved in this. And so we're going to be recreating this. Actually, we're going to be using the same composition, but different elements, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to do that right now. All right, this was my Italian Beauties, my paper quilts, were published in So Somerset a while back, a winter issue, and there were several pieces, and they were all from Italian antique postcards. And I'll just quick go through this so you can see the different images that I used. And so today I thought we would recreate this one, which I kept. The others I sold. This was the only one that I kept, and it was special to me because it had this antique Italian money, lira, on here. And so I wanted to keep it, and I'm so glad I did, because we're going to recreate this today. At least the composition we're going to recreate, and I'm going to explain and share with you all the techniques that I used to put it together. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about the image. And the images that I chose were from Italian postcards, and this is just a small little stash. These are just my Italian postcards, old images that I just love. And so I went through those, and I found one that I really liked and haven't used before. And so it's these girls all together in a group, which is really unusual to see something like this. And so I decided that this would be perfect to use instead of a single focal image, because we're talking about Italian beauties. So here's a bunch of beauties all together hanging out and having a good time. And what I love about this project is that we're going to be talking about doing a transfer, which is what this is. We're going to do painting. It incorporates collage and natural dyes and stitching fabric and papers together. So I called them my paper quilts because we're literally going to sandwich pieces together and stitch through and then put a backing on it. So I took great liberties with that word, quilting, and so it's not paper quilts, but it is, well, it's not real quilting, but it is a quilting of a sort. So okay, so I just wanted to share with you all the different elements that we're going to be be using, and then what we'll do is we're going to put it all together. Okay, so in the originals I transferred them onto fabric. This is fabric, but today I wanted to do something a little different, because you know how I am, I like changing things up. And so I decided to do the transfer, and if you haven't done transfers before, we have a video for you to watch. I have my transfer video, and then the video on adhesives, using adhesives to make transfers, and this was just with gel medium. So I simply had it photocopied a little smaller than the original postcard, and then I transferred it onto the cardstock. Actually, this is mixed media paper, I lied. So we're going to rip this out, and we're going to put it on fabric, and then we'll stitch it down. So that's this part of the piece. Okay, so we talked about doing the transfer, and then we're also doing collage. So this piece back here is collaged, and then these pieces are collage pieces. And so I've already got this piece of mixed media paper that I collaged with some just some scraps of, and I love using my scraps of paper to do little collage pieces and then insert them into work. So a lot of times if I'm feeling like I'm kind of not stuck but just need to move along in the studio, I'll sit down and I'll just collage some papers just to kind of, you know, move into a different flow and a different frame of mind. What I used for this one is this piece here and then these small pieces. Now these are just cast-offs from after I cut the paper on my paper machine, on my paper cutting machine, dealio thingy. I get all these little cast-offs and I just thought how fun it would be to use them in work. So that's what I did with this group of Italian Beauties. So I'm going to share that with you today. However, what's a little different about this is that these are actually collage cardboard, which is super easy to do. You can just take a sheet of cardboard, I hope you can see that, the thickness of it, and then just collage it and then cut it into pieces and use it for elements in your work. So we're not going to do that today. We're going to use this one today because we're going to be different and do something really fun. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is hand-dyed fabrics. And in this group that I sent to Sew Somerset, my Italian Beauties, I tea-dyed all of the fabrics. And I actually found this exact same fabric in my stash, and I've got it right here. And for this new piece that we're creating, we're going to use the same fabric. Now this is what it looks like when it's white. So you can see that I tea-dyed it originally. Hope you can see the difference in the color. But for this one, I used black bean dye, and you can see the difference in the color. And I wasn't sure which fabrics I would want to use, but you know, it can come in so many different shades. It's one of the things I love about using black beans is, you know, you don't have to just dye it one time. You can triple and quadruple dye it over and over again until it gets really dark and really yummy. I love the color. And I think it's going to go really well with our girls today. So it's going to look just fabulous. Anyway, so that part, so dyeing, and we have a video for you for that too. If you haven't seen the natural dyes video, then I urge you to look at that. Dyeing with black beans is super, super easy, and it makes a gorgeous color. And I think we have some shots of that too that we're going to put into the in the video today so that you can see, you know, exactly what I did with it. Okay, the last two techniques that we're going to talk about today are stitches. We're going to be stitching these pieces literally into a piece of cotty paper. So we're going to be using all these components, gluing them into cotty, and then stitching through and then putting a backing on it. So that's the next one. But the most important one, and the one I'm going to demonstrate today, is painting. And this whole background, this is a whole piece behind here that's hand painted, and I hope you can see it. It's really yummy, and I'm going to share with you the way I did that. It's not with a brush, and we're going to do it right now. Okay, all set. Got my gloves on, all ready to go. All right, I decided yesterday that I wanted to go ahead and work this up, and this is the one that we'll probably use in the class unless I like the one we make right now better. But as you can see, I've incorporated the colors from the Italian Beauties, and I was kind of heavy on the brown because I want to give it really good contrast. And so the colors that we're using are raw umber, that's golden raw umber, and golden quinacridone magenta, and then I've been using Seth Apter's fresco finish, his chalk acrylics. This is Venice blue, which I really like, and I really like his paints. They play well with others, and they're nice and flat. They're chalk paints, chalk acrylics it says. And then we're going to use Titan Buff. Now, if you want to mix other colors together, that's fine, but I chose to just go straight from the bottle. And instead of using a brush, what I used was a palette knife. And I love using different things to paint with. It just, let's see, it just gives you a different texture, and it's completely unexpected. So So we're just gonna smear it on, which is a definite technical art term, and you can see how fun it looks on the paper. And this isn't my favorite palette knife, so we're getting rid of this right now. We're gonna use this one. So we're just gonna put down a nice dark layer to begin with. And what you want to remember is to always work dark to light. And we're just going to give it a nice coat of paint. Okay, so my raw umber is down, and now I'm putting some Venice blue. I mean, people think about using a palette knife on a canvas, but most people don't think about using it on paper, and it gives such a really yummy texture. Sorry, trying not to hit the camera. And the great thing about it is you can just lift off what you don't want and set it aside, and we're going to put it in a palette so that we can come back and use it later. But doesn't it look yummy already? I love the way it turns out. Okay, so we're gonna let this dry and be right back. So my quinacridone magenta is starting to get really thick, but I like it that way. So we're just gonna use just a little bit of it. I don't want a ton. And we're just gonna I just wanna be able to just to bring out the colors that were in the original image. Okay, now we're going to use Titan Buff. And we're going to be kind of generous because Titan Buff is really the background color to this piece. If you notice right here, that's really the color that's going on, this kind of buffed color. And so we want to make sure that we have that represented in the work so that no matter how many other colors we're using, it's a really cohesive, it has a really cohesive look to it. Okay, we're going to let this dry now, and we're going to take off the excess, and then we're going to come back with some brown. Okay, so we're just going to come back with a little bit of brown. Oops, now I'm getting it all over. It's a wonderful thing about art is you do make messes. Okay, so we're going to bring that in. All right, now you can always use a cloth too to come back and wipe up some areas. And we're going to get rid of that. So we're just going to lift off just a little tiny bit. There we go. And I hope you can see lift this off, but I really like the way it's starting to look. It's the same color, so it just looks a little bit different than the other one, but I really love it. It's looking pretty yummy. Okay, so as I said earlier, you could just transfer it onto the cloth using gel medium, but we didn't. I wanted it to have just a little bit different texture. So now I'm just going to rip it off the paper. I want a nice rough edge. I want it to look like it came off a frescoed wall. And I think it pretty much does, which is so cool. And remember that when you don't use the original piece and you make another generation, in other words, you make a transfer or you photocopy it and then you paint it and then you photocopy it again and you just keep making these generational pieces, they change over time, and it becomes your own, you know, wonderful artwork. Especially, you know, makes a completely different look than the original. Okay, so I just want to get a ragged cut, and I know I keep, see if I can rip this, because I don't want a perfect edge, and I don't think I want it quite that big, so we're gonna whack that off too. Just gonna rip it. Okay, so I'm liking this now. I think I'm gonna cut this little edge off though, because I'm not crazy about that. And yeah, I kind of like those guys hanging off there. All right, so now we're gonna just put some gel medium down on it. And when you do this, whenever you're gluing to cloth, you want to have a dry brush. You want to make sure that there's no water in it. Otherwise, it could get really, I'm just using golden gel medium, and I'm putting it on the cloth. And I'm going to glue the image down. Okay. And get a really good contact with that. And we're going to bend it the other way. Okay. And I can come back later and just touch up those edges, but I'm liking the way it looks now. Okay, we're just going to set the glue aside, and we're going to talk more about pulling this all together. All right. So here's our cotty paper, and if you don't know about cotty paper, it has a really high rag content, and it's just yummy. It's really easy to stitch through, and I just adore cotty paper. I use it for a lot of things. If you've been following our channel for a while, then you know how much I love cotty paper. And we're going to use the first one I created because the other one's still drying. And so we're going to use the painted paper, and we're going to cover the cotty paper. And on the bottom, we're going to cover it with this music paper. Now in the original one, I used antique music paper. I don't have any more of that. So we're going to use the wrapping paper, and I like this, I think, even better. I think it's going to be really lovely with this piece, and if you see it all together, doesn't that look great? I think it looks really cool. All right, so we're just going to hit this with glue and get it all glued, and we'll be right back. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do, we've got this positioned right here, and I've got my fabrics ready. I'm waiting, and I thought we would use this yummy, it's actually a sash from an antique dress, and I just love this old velvet, and I just thought this would be really pretty to use, so we're going to use this. So that's going to go down over the bottom part of it. And then this has to be cut into pieces because I want to put a piece of this at the top here. And then I want to use some end cuts on my paper cutter to stitch on. And the next thing that we're going to do too is figure out the fabric. And I'm thinking I want to use the original fabric that I used. So this would go here, and we're going to just rough cut that too. So we've got a bunch of things to put together, and I'm going to get the, yeah, that's pretty cool looking right there. So I'm going to get this cut up, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've made all the cuts in the paper that I think I'm going to use. So we're talking about recreating this piece, and this piece, and then a piece here. And I actually stitched this piece to the paper. So I think what I'm going to do, and I wanted this to be just a little bit smaller than this one, This is actually the same size, but I wanted this to be just a little bit smaller, and I chose the document paper because I thought it looked really cool with it, rather than bringing in more colors. But I love the little, these are like little wax stamps on the, the wrapping paper, and I thought that was really great. It brings a little bit of that red in, but it's not, you know, overt. Okay, so I've been working on placement and just wanting to see how everything fits together. I found this wonderful little tiny piece of paper that says Italian Hymn, and so I thought that was absolutely perfect with the music here and the music over here. And when I originally created this, I was listening to opera music, so it just all makes sense, doesn't it? It just kind of fits together perfectly. Okay, so now we're going to just put a few dabs down because I want to glue some of these pieces together, and I don't want them to move, and I can go back and glue things back. And get it all, you know, where I want it. So we're just gonna come back and glue it. I just don't want them to move around on me, so I'm just gonna get some things glued down here. Okay, I've got all my bits all glued down, and now I'm going to start stitching it all together. And in order to do that, I'm using an awl. This is just an old rag, and I'm just going to make punches because it's going to be so much easier to stitch because we've got a lot going on here now. So we have this piece of paper. It's a mixed media paper, so it's thick anyway, and now we've got several coats of paint, and then we've glued it into the cadi, so you can see it's pretty hard to get a needle straight through there, so that's why we're going to use an awl. So I'm going to be stitching this and these pieces, this piece and this, and little X's on the side. So we're just going to give you some ideas about what that looks like. Okay, I've got everything stitched down, and I really like the straggly look that's going on here. I've got the white stitches done, I've got the brown stitches, it's really close, and I made the little cutoffs larger just to be more editorial for you so that you could see it a little bit better. And I wanted to show you the back, and I wanted to show you that I finished this off by just tying a knot in here and then just clipping it off, and then we're going to glue that down to our mixed media paper, and then we'll have a finished product. Okay, so I've got it all stitched, it's all backed and covered. It's just perfect. I love the way it turned out, and I've just got a couple of tips for you. First of all, don't use regular thread, use upholstery thread. I use brown, black, white, whatever. I use just regular thread when I want to do really fine, tiny stitching. Otherwise, when I'm doing larger pieces like this, I always use something thicker, and it just gives you better texture. It's just really cool. The other thing is when you're using antique ephemera, like this old antique piece of paper, make sure you put gel medium over it first, because if you're going to stitch through it, it's just going to crumble. So a couple of little tips right there. One last tip: if you cannot stitch, if your hands won't let you, if stitching is something that you absolutely hate, you can create faux stitches by just simply wrapping the cut pieces, and it will look just like you stitched it. Well, we're at Ciao for Now, our very first Ciao for Now in 2019, and next time you visit, we'll be in the studio, and I will be giving you a studio tour because I have so many things to show you. I'm going to flip through my art journal from last year. I'm going to show you paintings that I finished. I'm going to show you the new work that I'm doing for our show. And if you go to my blog, I'm teaching one class this year, and it's in Fort Collins, Colorado in May. So if you go to the blog, you'll see workshops at the top or classes. I can't remember what it says. You know how I forget some things. And so you can just go on there, click on there, and it will tell you about the class. So until then, ciao for now.